Let me start by sharing best practices throughout the recruitment and moderation stages. Generally, patients want to be considered by healthcare companies when new products are being developed, when information packs are being created, and they are eager to share their experiences and ideas, and also have someone value their opinions. But of course, our question, and your question is, how do we recruit these people? And most of all, maybe even more important, how do we ensure their participation and keep them engaged throughout the interviews, throughout the whole research? Well, there are 3 learnings on recruitment I want to share with you. First of all, manage expectations of the participants. Also, understand and relate to your target group. And also, regarding the screener, we would advise working with profile recruitment. We have learned that it helps recruitment, it minimizes dropout rate, and it ensures data quality if participants' expectations are well managed already from the first contact they have with our recruiters. What do we mean by management of expectations? Well, the Dutch guidelines for market research, they provide clear-cut advice on this. These guidelines mention that the invitation should be informative, clear, and well-structured, and should include all details regarding the goal of the research and the ways the data will be used and stored. So in practice, we often find that patients have little to no experience participating in previous market research, which makes this step, the expectation management, even more crucial. In this step, we ensure that participants are aware of what their participation entails, but at the same time, we already start connecting with participants in the research long before we even get the chance to interview them. And why is this important? Well, as mentioned earlier, engaging them with the purpose of the study and getting their buy-in minimizes the dropout rate while also laying the foundation to gain deeper insights throughout the research itself. And patients really appreciate understanding the way they can be of help. So management of expectations is not only important for the quality of data, but also for the recruitment in general, for lowering the dropout rate. Secondly, try to visualize your target group in relation to the methodology and to your research in general, because the success of your approach and also the success of the recruitment will very much depend on your ability to put yourself in your respondents' shoes. For instance, think about how mobile are they? Can you actually organize interviews in a central location, or should you perhaps consider a different approach in order to minimize a respondent's physical effort? Our project managers can guide you in your decision regarding these. SKIM fosters the development of the project managers to help them grow into experienced moderators. So our team typically manages recruitment and moderate interviews, and this way we have the knowledge to advise you already early in your project on finding the right balance between the target group, the methodology, and the research goals. And having the same person to see the process through and consult also from personal experience is really one of the things that our clients love about working with us. Now, if we look at the third learning in the light of recruitment, we recommend working with profiles rather than lengthy screeners to facilitate recruitment. And how did we come up to profile recruitment? Well, recruiting via physicians became a demanding process due to the increasingly strict regulations imposed by, for instance, the Dutch guidelines for market research, but think also about privacy regulations that physicians have to deal with, to obey, and therefore it became a lot of work for them to refer us to patients. If we think, for instance, about the Dutch guidelines for market research, they indicate that to invite patients via physicians, the invitation to cooperate should always be in writing. The practitioner must hand over a letter to the patient detailing the research, so including that part discussing the management of expectations. And at all times, it must be the patient who initiates the contact with the market research. So it's really waiting until somebody calls us. And in reality, let's be honest, physicians are extremely busy and are becoming less keen and interested in referring us to patients due to these regulations. And even those with whom we have very good relationship and would like to help us, it's usually such a lengthy process that naturally doctors do not prioritize. And so there is a low success rate. Well, these challenges actually led to us having to identify new ways to reach out and recruit patients. We've learned that searching for patients in just one database or network is not sufficient, and therefore multiple recruiters active in different areas, think about healthcare, but also consumer, B2B, will be asked to support recruitment, which we call multiple channel recruitment. In order to facilitate this multi-channel recruitment, we recommend working with profiles. The profile should be short, concise, focusing on three main screening criteria. You could think about, a very concise 3 points description of your respondents. And also, based on the screener that you have, our team can guide you in creating the best profile that will keep the ball rolling, because that's in fact what we want. We want that recruitment goes on, continues, and is successful. What are the advantages of working with recruitment profiles? Well, first of all, it is time efficient. Secondly, it helps targeting the right respondents without first having to go through very lengthy screeners only to eventually find out that the patient does not match the profile of those we are looking for. And finally, by having short recruitment profiles, patients themselves are more likely to propose other patients they know, which can be of great help for the recruitment, because patients are often in touch with fellow sufferers through support groups, word of mouth, and other forums. So managing expectations, being able to visualize your target group in relation to your research, and working with profile recruitment should all add to a successful recruitment process. However, recruitment is important, but we all know that while recruitment may work out fine, it is the moderator who makes or breaks your study. The quality of the data and input that you finally get depends on how skillful and knowledgeable the moderator is. I have mentioned earlier that at SKIM we try to connect and build a foundation in the relationship with the respondents already during recruitment. And it takes a skillful moderator to create the context during the interview to access patient story. However, if we zoom in patient research, we have also identified that allocating the time in the discussion guide for the moderator to connect with the respondent and create a context to dig deeper on and gain deeper insights is as much as important as the skillful moderator is. I will start by looking first of all at the role of the moderator, and then what I've called the role of the researcher in developing the discussion guide to create this context where the story is being told. So first of all, a skillful moderator in the context of patient research is what we would say a sensible moderator and experienced, capable of showing empathy to help patients feel at ease and connect. Throughout the interviews, it is the moderator who is in charge of creating this context, the proper context for respondents to feel comfortable of sharing details about their condition. You want that the moderator creates that, I would call it a bit of the intimate context, where asking deeper on certain details that have to do with their conditions is being seen as properly, as part of the research, as something natural and not as forced, as being forced. So this will ultimately result in patients being more involved in and cooperative throughout the discussion, and also make them more likely to be engaged in research in future. You know, think about a follow-up, or for instance, an immersion session that you might want to involve your participants in. If we practically look at ways that a moderator could show empathy and connect with patients to create this context, I would look at the listening part, and at the same time at the communication part. In terms of listening, what could you think of? Well, listening to their story by, for instance, allowing silence to fall so that patients can take a deep breath, compose themselves, and even dry their tears, because that happens sometimes, as these issues can often be emotionally sensitive. Also, informing them already from the beginning and skipping questions that patients find difficult to answer is a great way to just to give them the opportunity to find their way of telling the story. And of course, you know, simply informing the respondents that they can take as many breaks as they feel comfortable with, letting them feel you are not pressed for time. On the communication side, I would say, in a nutshell, communicate on patient's level. And how do you do that? Well, by using an approachable tone to make them feel at ease, by avoiding the use of very difficult words or abstract terms that patients might not be familiar with, but also might find it difficult to admit it. It happens very often that when you use these difficult words, they do not want to lose face, so they would not say, unless they are being asked in the proper way, that they do not know those words. This could lead to participants feeling very insecure, whereby you finally jeopardize the rapport you have built up, as well as maybe having them improperly answer your questions, or even sometimes not even answer your questions. However, if you need to use difficult terms, do make sure that you clearly explain the right meaning. And it's always very good to check if the term is familiar before you, of course, you know, explain the meaning, because you don't want to come over as patronizing. This is what I would say on the moderator's part. But of course, there is the researcher who writes the discussion guide, the researchers who develop the discussion guide, and they also have an important role in providing the moderator with the time to invest in creating this context. So patient research requires time investment to build rapport and to listen to the story that changed patients' life. In order to do so, moderators need time for rapport building, and the usual 5 minutes that we receive in most of the discussion guides are really not sufficient. I would say think about 15 to 20 minutes, and sometimes even to 30 minutes or even more, depending on the condition that you are talking about. Because intentionally allocating time for the moderator and to connect and access patient's story helps create, you know, that intimate context that I've referred to earlier, to achieve deep insights, to probe naturally on aspects that are relevant for the research. And it also provides more structure to the interview. Why? And why is storytelling that important for the patients? Well, first, because some conditions are extremely life invasive, and patients participating in an interview specifically dealing with their condition just cannot talk around it. You could see it, you know, maybe a bit as a natural need for them to vent their feelings, to share their personal story with you. Secondly, because they regard their participation also as a chance to share their perspectives, and that's based on their experiences, so their personal story, on ways the services and the drugs and the products they rely on could be improved. And many patients also, we hear that very often, think about their participation or view their participation as adding to the big picture, to the scientific development, and really believe that, feel that the information they provide will ultimately help other patients. We have learned also, if you do not allocate this time in the discussion, the time for the storytelling, this will take place regardless, which eventually means that the moderator has less time to dig deeper on the important research relevant questions, or forces these at the expense of connection with the patient. So setting time apart in the discussion for the storytelling to take place helps as much in creating the natural opportunity for the moderator to find the opening during that particular conversation and probe on research relevant questions. Also, as explained earlier, SKIM's two-in-one approach of recruitment and moderation, we invest in creating this context already from the first contact moment we have with the respondent, and giving the moderator the time to connect with the respondent during recruitment means that they can think about, also ways of approaching the interview, how to connect during the interview and gain deeper insights. Yet, as the interview dynamics are different, having or getting the time to access patient story during the interview itself is of utmost importance to build on this foundation laid during the recruitment phase. And of course, it makes it also very natural to follow up with the respondent. You could call it a kind of aftercare, where we can manage different questions that participants might have. Well, this was these were the key learnings that I wanted to share with you, and because I can imagine you are very curious to learn more about it, how this is being made possible, and what are the benefits for you. As mentioned in the beginning, Jeroen and Marcel are here next to me, and they will inspire you with their stories. Now, I'll start with Marcel. Marcel, could you maybe zoom in on the importance of relating to your respondents and making them feel at ease before, during, and after the research is so important. So, and also, what does it take to do this from you as a moderator? So I think you can see Marcel and Jeroen as well. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Anna. So, well, if you get patients at ease, I think you can better connect with them and ultimately get the most out of your research. So let me give you a couple of examples on what went wrong and how I dealt with that. So it's a while ago that I was interviewing patients with a chronic illness that had to describe their relative closeness or distance with the disease they had in a projective technique. And the technique that I had to use was a solar system. Well, as you can imagine, there's a high degree of difference between people's cognitive abilities. So some people were perfectly fine, but others, and yeah, unfortunately, especially with chronic illnesses, the majority of people find it very hard to understand what a solar system was. So during my introduction of the solar system and my question, some patients were unable to grasp the entire concept of a solar system. So in the end, the entire exercise didn't really work out. It was kind of like useless, and on the spot you need to revert to a more say more direct questioning on the spot rather than to continue with a projection. And through the remainder of the discussion, there were other projections or other techniques used, and you just need to, like, on the spot do something else, figure something else out to keep the conversation going. So my advice in that respect would be to really, in your preparation, keep the conversation simple, rephrase certain questions, and make sure that you always have different questions or different techniques in your back pocket, so to speak, to make use of everything and get the most out of the patient. So keep conversations simple and to the point would be my advice in that respect. As Anna also mentioned, is when I'm at in-home interviews, I always allow additional time. Always schedule 2 hours for a 1-hour interview. That's the way it just sort of like works, because you want to use that time to introduce the research properly, to get to know your respondent, to get to know the partner, or even other people that are like in the household present that walk in or walk out or just pass by. Like there's always people entering the room for like no reason, children maybe. So you need the extra time to introduce the research, get familiar with your surroundings, the patient or the caregiver or other people. But yeah, you cannot keep everything under control. There are some unexpected events that will turn up. So let me give you a couple of those examples, because it really illustrates the point of allowing some extra time. So when I had to go to someone's home to interview a caregiver and how they dealt with the patients, their partners, basically tube feeds, that patient turned out to be bedridden and was in the living room, and the caregiver had to occasionally take care of her partner. So even though you would never imagine that that would take so much time, the interview went over time about like half an hour to 45 minutes. That's something that when you receive your initial request, like, okay, we want 8 1-hour interviews, you already know that you're going to spend more than 8 hours on these interviews, so allow that extra time. In addition, there's another example. I was interviewing a severely ill PAH patient, and that patient turned out to be so fragile. She could like hardly speak. She was cold. So the interview was not really with the patient, but turned out to be with a caregiver, with the occasional help of the patient. So not only extra time, but also the flexibility in terms of flexing your questions. And in the end, it doesn't then really matter if you're interviewing the caregiver or the patient. Like there's something that you cannot foresee when you go to someone's home. And I will never forget that one moment when I went to this patient's house and she gave me an entire tour of the house, which already took like 30 minutes. Like, who am I to then say, hey, I only have 1 hour for that interview? You just don't want to do that. That's my personal opinion. So I would just take more time, because it's all part of the rapport building, and it would basically ensure you to get deeper insights along the way. And yeah, one of my colleagues, unfortunately, she's not working here anymore. She accompanied me during one of, I think, one of my most intense interviews. And this guy, we were in the south of the Netherlands. He just could not stop crying throughout the interview. So I think the interview didn't even take 1 hour. It took even over 2 hours. That was, yeah, breathtaking, so to speak. So yeah, all in all, I would say flexibility and improvisation in that respect is key. But yeah, if I look back to all the patient interviews that I've done in the past 15 years, I can really feel and say that the connection that I've made with these people, even though it was a very short time, the connections were great, and it's very rewarding to meet these people and to realize that you've been a part in someone's life, even though it was only for an hour or two. I feel grateful for that, and at least I hope to really have radiated the impression and feeling that their contributions are appreciated, and that the insights that were extracted have impact on their own and others' lives, Anna. So that's my what I had to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think as moderators, maybe among you have also got a chance to moderate interviews with patients yourself. I think you can share this experience, and it can be very impactful, isn't it? Just a note to everybody, you've got the opportunity to ask questions through the chat function. So if you have any questions for me or for Marcel, and after Jeroen has also shared his experience, please do put them in the chat option function, and we will try to deal with them at the end. And if we don't have time for all of them, then we will approach you personally afterwards. So I'm curious about your questions. Jeroen, also great that you are here. What I would like to ask you, whether you could share with us the way the two-in-one approach I've mentioned earlier, so managing recruitment and moderating yourself, how these proved to be beneficial for your project, and what did it mean for the respondents, but also for your clients, for the quality of data, and also, of course, for you as a moderator.
Well, it's a very good and very relevant question. Let me share a great example of a recent project where the two-in-one approach really worked out well. For that project, I was managing both recruitment and moderation, and in the end, that really added value to the project. Let me first describe a bit of background of the project. We needed to recruit 25 COPD patients for an app test, and the project consisted of 3 different parts. For the first part, I had to invite all the patients to a central location in Rotterdam. And in this group, I introduced respondents to this project. I explained them everything about it. And together with them, I installed the app on their phone, just to be sure that everything is working as it should be in the end. In the 5 weeks thereafter, the patients were asked to complete questions daily about how they felt, how much water they consumed during the day, how they slept, how short of breath they felt during the day, how many cigarettes they smoked, and they also needed to indicate if they had taken their medications during that day. And during that period, the patients could also download a daily report showing statistics on their lifestyle, on their COPD complaints, and that really made it more interactive for me and for the patients. And after those 5 weeks, we invited them again for a focus group, but then in Amsterdam. And the goal of that session was really to evaluate the app. And what made this project so special for me as a moderator is that I was really in extensive contact with all the patients for, I guess in total, almost 8 weeks, as I was involved in both recruitment and in moderation. And as a moderator during the sessions, it felt really great for me that I could connect to them. And it was really great for me to see them again after that 5-week period, just to meet them again. And as I also moderated the first session during the 5 weeks in between, I really noticed that the patients felt really comfortable contacting me in the case of questions. And with app testing, there are always a lot of questions during the fieldwork period. And then it really makes a difference if the patients feel at ease contacting you. Because we all know for long-term projects with patients, the dropout rate is really high. And for this project, we by heart only had 1 or 2 dropouts, so that was really good for a long-term COPD patient project. And in the end, the commitment of the patients was really great. And after the project, I did a short evaluation with the patients, and I received really positive feedback of almost everybody of them. They all had the feeling that it was great to commit to such a project. They really enjoyed the participation of the project. And that they really enjoyed it, that was mostly because they felt that they and the input they gave was really appreciated by me as a moderator and also by the clients in the end. And by being in close contact with the patients during recruitment and moderation, some even dropped the number of cigarettes they smoked each day because they had some kind of a responsibility towards me or towards other patients they have met during the research. So that was really great for me to see. So that's the experience I wanted to share, Anna.
Yeah, I still remember, when you were managing that project, every time you would get this kind of messages, it was like, yay, he dropped, I don't know how many cigarettes per day, and he quitted smoking. So I can still remember. We only have like 3 minutes, 4 minutes? No? We don't have much time? I just wanted to do one question. We have received a couple of them. So, yeah, Marcel, there's this question. Thanks for sharing your story. How does it feel to be so close up and personal with your respondents, with the patients?
up close and personal. What I if I think back to well, in your preparation, you always have this. You're always looking for this ultimate moment where you want to work towards. So there's always this one key question that's like the peak or the epiphany of the discussion. So when you're in a conversation with a respondent, like ultimately you feel that you're sort of like sucked into this vortex where you're totally with the respondent and you're in full connection, where nothing else matters than you and that other person. And when you feel that moment is coming, you can probe deeper and deeper and to grasp what really matters and what the actual impact is. And often people actually come to a certain self-realization of how big the impact of the topic in question actually is to them and what it means to them. So now probably your question is like, okay, so how do you do that? There's a couple of things that are really important to get to that particular moment. The answer, though, is, I think, very simple. It's experience. It's having done lots and lots of conversations so that you actually feel that that moment is coming, the moment that you've prepared is actually coming. And how to feel that moment, you can only reach that through careful preparation, careful planning of your interview, and also visualization of the interview, of like how the interview will happen, where that moment should kind of like come, and then throughout your discussion, it's very good listening. You need very attentive listening to feel that, to hear that moment come in, and then when you're in that particular vortex, it's effective probing where elements such as tact and intuition play a very important role to dig deeper, but not too deep so that people collapse, but keep that, that tight balance of what you can actually make happen during that interview. So I would say that's how I would describe the vortex as coming up close and personal to a respondent, Anna. Thank you.
Great. Jeroen, one question and then we are done. Yeah. Any specific plans for the future to manage the contact that you had with these respondents for such a long time?
Yeah, we have. Let me keep this really short. Within SKIM, we are already brainstorming about some kind of a patient aftercare program. And what I essentially mean by that is that we notice that sometimes patients can feel the need to contact me as a moderator again after a project, or may feel the need to contact some of their fellow patients, which they have met during an interview again. And we are just brainstorming about ideas how we can facilitate that, how we can create some kind of an easy, accessible platform for the patients so they can contact me again, contact other patients again. So we're working on that, and if you have any news to share about that, we will do so.
Great. I think you are looking forward to it. Promise I will stop. Thank you again very much for your participation, and I'm sure you had sufficient time to learnings that we shared with you. If you have any questions or if you feel like brainstorming with us, please do not hesitate to contact us. The questions that are left, we will pick them up afterwards. I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon/morning, and we'll keep in touch to the next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.